Okay, I thought I'd discuss some of the fishy and esoteric gargoyles I'm forced to deal with on a regular basis because of their obsession with me. And they set up a toxic relay station, alleging that what the ringleader is pulling is some kind of cosmic itinerary, but it was not planned. When it comes to the ringleader, they claim he is the museum, so how can he be robbing the museum? I'd like to talk a minute about the man who made Smithsonian from museum theft, John Schulman, who's a major player and a resource for the ringleader of the scam. Schulman went to the governor's school, as I did, and when I got back, one of his alliance comrades was with me on a day that the city police claimed I committed an armed robbery, which was ridiculous, and it was no problem because the person who was robbed said at the trial that it wasn't me. But this was a store where my father used to take me to get Klondikes, and where I proved to be very shy, much to my asshole father's frustration. He would ask me whether I wanted one, and I was too shy to anything but nod my head. And it frustrated him and made him angry at me. And it scared me and made me uncomfortable, and it made me even more shy. One of the things that we know about Ian Wattmaker, who implanted a nerve agent in a shy child who wouldn't um, drink carbonated beverages or eat pizzas because it was too strong, is that his favorite scene in film at the time he was doing this was a scene in Bullet where a very frightened man in a room for his own safety has the door kicked down and they open fire on this individual. So Ian Wattmaker was sort of leading the charge of Pittsburgh that the Achilles heel of their hardcore on the street is to be afraid. And their brilliant from Harvard used to say that contempt for the Tsarina's son among the Russian peasants is what made the revolution possible. He went to Colfax and was full of cool facts in his mind. He memorized Ripley's Believe It or Not. Well, everyone knows what you got away with, Karen Lovett, who introduced me to Fripp, like love it or leave it. Like Karen Lovett used to say to this cringing child who'd been poisoned with a nerve agent, battered, senseless stuff, and cutting a scene for Joel Kaplan to say, Whisper, what if we tell your mother? Like a scene out of Bullet. And Lovett was in this Whisper campaign, we know who you are and we saw what you did, she'd say, calling me up on the phone. So my grandparents had an Indian friend who used to say, blush, blush. That's how she told her children to brush their teeth. Well, of course, Kaplan wanted to make my grandparents blush too. And my father would hear her, oh, Ryland, if only you knew about your son. Of course, this was all masterpiece theater of fraudulent and bizarre allegations, but suppose it didn't happen this way. I was terrified for my life and crawled in the top shelf of the towel closet. And they said, don't say like Anne Frank. Well, that was, of course, the trauma that they were inducing, was to reproduce Anne Frank in a white child, because they think that's equity. These are the people who are the plumbers for Black Lives Matter and the Green Party, working with the KKK. It was the KKK who did this to me, and the white Jewish community, but they're allies, the plumbers in Black Lives Matter now. And they just shrug it all off and saying you had an asshole father. But this fake masterpiece theater of fraudulent and bizarre allegations feeds into this idea, what if it happened a different way than I've reported? Suppose, for example, my distinguished grandparents of the Midwest were confronted with Italian rage that Dee Dee had seduced me and I was up in the closet crying and scared, right? And they would have said, well, we have to let him calm down. He didn't understand what sex was. Well, they knew, but they hid what they were doing. Mr. Mady, who I pleaded with to walk me home, who sent me to the office because my fingernails were bleeding, where I told them I was going to be killed. And when I disappeared for months, they didn't even investigate. Why? Because Ruth Hammer had film pornographers tapping in child pornography, making curiosities for the Shionas and so forth of the child who was being tortured. But the gang of hers at the school were like, oh, we don't know where he is. He must have taken a sick absence. He'll come in with a note from his mother. Of course, that never happened. But they didn't know when I showed up. I was in terrible trauma, crying. I bit my fingernails bloody. Mr. Mady sent me to the office because I was chewing my fingernails bloody, saying these people were going to kill me. He advised me to take chorus at Taylor Olddice when we moved to get away from them, where Andrea Swimmer was set on me by the black woman in charge of chorus at Olddice, who herself mocked anybody who questioned her licentiousness. She was a mocker working with the Warhols. And of course, she was empowered by the Ripper Hatter, Peter Gabriel, to summon her gang to murder Circe Kennedy. And the city of asylum, Seattle, is not. They said they were going to bring me here. The ad was to give me asylum, but they did. They put me in a clubhouse that poisoned me, that murdered people. Their invented excuse was a penny line in defense of Shulman, right? And they slashed and murdered Shannon Harps for the Harp of Burma war monks who were presiding over the penny line of the ringleader who is the museum, they say. So they summoned down on me this claim that a one-night stand and a howler of a comment was a presidential issue because I am Jimmy C. And this deep scam alibi for them is the key concept, that they just use the names of famous people like Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter. And this is what you must keep thinking while they demand you go along with it. The ringleader who says it's a cosmic itinerary, but it wasn't planned. And they love smoking guns about having caused the AIDS attack and been prepared for it, and now COVID, but oh, it's just a cosmic itinerary. A soul seance, but it wasn't planned. Inventing new excuses to show that there's a battle line, that they will shoot, anyone they feel like it, and inventing a new excuse at every turn. Black Lives Matter is always handy as an excuse for these misfit warmongers and pro-Trump aliens who work. One of the people who got in touch with me with Clint Eastwood, I mean, obviously he's not going to blow up Tacoma. He has Ken here. So you got to hope somebody's on your side and something that's passably normal. But he also has a sort of almost macabre fascination with the macho. So the child crying or the man being shot to death in bullet might not really interest him or cause any sympathy. He's soft on the Japanese, and we know that one of Gail Burston's early mesmers for King Edward in Hollywood had a shirt torn, and she says, you ought to buy me a new one. Somebody's out there saying, but I loved Hiroshima. So these misfit warmongers are Ripper psychology for Gabriel and Shulman. And the ringleader is, was wired up through Fred Rogers. And I was a friend of King Crimson. I liked them, but they had this, used the clue who the ringleader was by saying they were being snarky when they descended, a mass of them on me, saying, I had written something pretty about being in Wimborne. Sometimes people like my writing. I went to the governor's school. What's that got to do with you? And so it was obvious that Now, don't you feel guilty enough to have a death wish? Oh, we're fulfilling your death wish, Connie. And all of this stuff. They had me in Edwardsville. They had a cat that was cute as can be, but it had been traumatized and tortured by the Society for Military Engineers out there, so that it would wet itself. It was turning a circle and turning a circle. It was never going to get better. They probably put it to sleep. And they had this guy named Murad who, that suspicious, he drowned, they said. And a suspicious person was on him, who was his girlfriend and lover. And, they had taken me out there by luring me to see T. Simon Ferrasani, which was already strange because of Tammy Simon, who was a lesbian from Magical Religion with the Dalai Lama, who descended on me from Star Trek or something, beamed down to Swarthmore to greet me with a Lennon-like Aquiline nose from Hollywood or whatever, and say, everything sounds true, and, you were a gentleman to Leslie, but we wonder what's going on with that neuroplasm that we implanted. So they have me in Edwardsville, right? They have me in Edwardsville. And with the cover girl from Hypatia Feminist Philosophy, and taking me to see T. Simon Ferrasani, that was an outspoken man from Vanda who believed in nonviolence. So, the logo Ripper Hatter Soul Seance has something to do with the overlapping in the mind of the maniac, Penis Gabriel, who says that Red Rain is about the death penalty, and then has a woman lifting her skirt showing a baby. And it has Biko indexed to, abortion in some strange way too on one of his collections. And he's like blinking and saying, rapid eye movement shows, the brutality dog and the bullseye of man, meaning the neuroplasm they implanted, and the Achilles heel of being terrified because having been tortured after held in hostage bondage as a child by organized criminals and museum thieves working for the ringleader, which is obviously Ringo, and who cares, right? Because he is the museum man.